Welcome to the deep dive. Our mission here is always to take a complex piece of research, something really dense, and give you the main takeaways without you having to wade through it all yourself. Today we're tackling a really significant study on invasion ecology. It's called A Global Synthesis of Naturalized and Invasive Plants and Aquatic Habitats, led by Alessandra Kortz and, honestly, a massive international team. This paper really flags some serious concerns about our freshwater systems globally. We're going to unpack their findings, look at some surprising hotspots, and, well, talk about the huge ecological and economic threats these plants pose. So maybe to start us off, why aquatic habitats? What makes them so susceptible to invasion?
That's a great place to start. Aquatic environments are, well, uniquely vulnerable. It's quite different from, say, a forest floor. You have a lot of natural disturbance baked in. Think about river flows changing dramatically or lake levels going up and down seasonally. But the big driver now is human activity. We've just created so much connectivity that wasn't there before. Massive canal networks, schemes moving water between river basins that were totally separate. Plus, all the damming we do and pulling water off for agriculture, it essentially builds highways for these invasive species. It makes controlling them, well, incredibly tough.
And we're talking specifically about plants here, aquatic plants. Maybe just quickly, for anyone listening who doesn't deal with this day to day, what exactly are these macrophytes we keep mentioning?
Good point. Yeah, macrophytes are basically aquatic vascular plants. So plants you can see with the naked eye growing in water, could be submerged, floating, or rooted in the shallows. And crucially, they aren't just passive occupants. The paper calls them autogenic engineers.
Autogenic engineers.
Yeah.
Okay, what does that mean in practice?
It's a key term. It means they don't just live in the system. They actively change the system. They reshape the habitat structure itself. They can mess with water quality, like oxygen levels, water flow, and they often seriously outcompete the native plants and harm biodiversity. The outlook isn't great. Projections suggest aquatic invasions could accelerate even faster than terrestrial ones.
Wow. Okay, and speaking of impacts, let's talk money. This isn't just an ecological issue. There's a serious economic dimension here.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Huge costs. The study looked at documented global costs specifically for invasive macrophytes, and they projected hitting US $32.8 billion. That's for the period 1975 to 2040 in 2017 dollars.
$32.8 billion. That sounds enormous. How does that stack up? And are we sure that number, even as big as it is, captures the full picture?
No, almost certainly not. We can be pretty confident it's a massive underestimation.
Really?
Well, there are big gaps in reporting costs, especially, from developing countries and across the tropics. That figure mostly captures direct costs, like paying for herbicides or mechanical removal, fixing clogged pipes. But it often misses the socioeconomic stuff, like how do you put a price on lost fishing access for a community or reduce tourism value? Or boats not being able to navigate? The true cost is likely much, much higher.
Okay, so the real damage from these plants is probably way beyond that $32 billion figure. Let's maybe look at some specific examples that the paper flags. The most infamous one has to be water hyacinth, right?
Oh, definitely. Pontidaria craspex.
Yeah.
It's originally from South America, but it's like the heavyweight champion of aquatic invaders. Spread to over 70 countries now. It's a floater, grows incredibly fast, and forms these super dense mats, thick blankets right across the water.
And those mats essentially suffocate the ecosystem below.
Exactly that. They block out all the sunlight, use up the oxygen. It just throws the whole system out of whack ecologically. And the human impacts are huge, too. Think clogged irrigation systems, problems for hydropower dams, and literally blocking access for fishing boats or transport. It's a major socioeconomic problem in many places.
And it's not just the big ones, like water hyacinth. You mentioned Azolla folliculoides earlier. Sounds tiny.
It is tiny, like less than an inch across. But it forms these huge colonies. Azolla drastically changes the water's physical and chemical properties. And one specific impact they noted was really concerning. It seems to reduce the survival rates of amphibian larvae. So knock-on effects. Then you've got the underwater threats like Leucorocyphon major. It's submerged, but it forms these dense, almost underwater meadows crowding out everything else. Really bad for native plant diversity.
Okay, so you have this huge variety of species spread all over the globe. How did the researchers even begin to get a handle on this? What was the method for collecting this global picture?
They relied on a pretty new tool, the SynHow database. You can think of it like a specialized library. It compiles data specifically on plants that have naturalized, established themselves outside their native range, broken down by habitat type worldwide. For this study, they zoomed in just on aquatic macrophytes, plants submerged or floating in what this study broadly calls water bodies and streams.
And how wide did they cast that net?
The final analysis pulled together 592 records that covered 78 different regions, some countries, some specific states within countries across all continents, and those records represented 183 unique species from 49 different plant families.
Okay, and just a point of clarification here for you listening. The paper makes a really important distinction. There's naturalized and then there's invasive. What's the difference?
Right, crucial difference. Naturalized just means a species has set up a self-sustaining population outside its native home. It's there, it's reproducing. Invasive means it's naturalized and it's causing demonstrable harm ecologically or economically. And yeah, plant might be naturalized in one place but considered fully invasive somewhere else.
So out of those 183 species they tracked,
52 of them were classified as invasive in at least one of the regions they looked at. So the study aimed to map where these naturalized and invasive species are, and importantly, figure out which ones are the real global superspreaders.
right, let's get to those results. Who are the most widespread troublemakers globally?
As we suspected, Pontidaria crassipes, the water hyacinth, is way out in front. It was found in, get this, 55.7% of the regions they sampled. That's 43 out of 78 regions.
Wow, over half. That just shows how adaptable it is and how much we've helped it move around, I guess.
Absolutely. Its environmental flexibility is huge, plus human transport.
Okay, beyond water hyacinth, who else makes the top tier? Any other major players found really widely?
Yeah, there are a few others found in more than a quarter of the regions. You've got Pistia stratiotes, that's water lettuce, then two common water weeds, Alodia canadensis and Alodia densa, also that tiny fern we mentioned, Azolla folliculoides, and parrot feather, Myriophyllum aquaticum. So really, just those 6 species make up a huge chunk of the global problem records.
Now, this is where it gets interesting regionally. The paper looked at the species-area relationship. So comparing the number of naturalized species found in a region to, like, the size of its aquatic habitats, where did they find surprisingly high numbers?
Yeah, some regions really stood out. Places like New Zealand, Italy, and California had significantly more naturalized species than you'd expect, just based on their area.
Okay, that kind of makes sense, doesn't it? If you think about human activity, high GDP, lots of trade, maybe warmer climates in parts, long history of importing ornamental plants.
Exactly. The aquarium trade is a big factor. And for Italy and France specifically, the paper points to things like rice farming and aquaculture. They create these perfect conditions for introduced plants to escape and spread into rivers and lakes nearby. They're known gateways in Europe.
And on the flip side, which regions had fewer than expected?
Places like South Sudan, Papua New Guinea, and Kyrgyzstan showed disproportionately fewer naturalized species, statistically speaking.
But then comes what, for me anyway, was the most surprising finding. It wasn't just about how many species, but about invasion intensity.
Yes. This is the really novel part, I think. It kind of shifts the focus. They looked at the proportion of species. They go from just being naturalized to becoming properly invasive, actually causing harm. And the big outlier, tropical Asia.
Okay, tell us more. What did they find there?
They found that tropical Asia had significantly more invasive species than you'd expect by chance. It actually ranked highest globally for the percentage of naturalized species that become invasive. It was 58.6%.
Wait, nearly 60%? That seems counterintuitive somehow. Don't we often hear that tropical ecosystems with all their biodiversity are maybe more resistant to invasion than temperate ones? At least on land?
That's often the thinking for terrestrial systems, yeah. High competition from native species can make it harder for newcomers. But this study suggests aquatic systems in tropical Asia might be different, more vulnerable.
Interesting. Was there a contrasting region?
Yes. The Mediterranean zonobiome, that's like a large climate region, showed the opposite. Significantly fewer invasives than expected. So the takeaway seems to be that these warmer tropical and subtropical zones, like the equatorial and savanna types, are where naturalized aquatic plants are most likely to flip into being invasive.
So if tropical Asia is this emerging hotspot for invasion intensity, what's driving that? What's the mix of factors?
It looks like a kind of perfect storm scenario. You've got the right environmental conditions, warm temperatures year-round, often high nutrient levels naturally. But then you layer on massive human influence, intentional introductions, accidental escapes, sure, but also think about regional issues like heavy deforestation. That leads to huge amounts of soil and nutrient runoff into rivers and lakes, basically creating this enriched, disturbed soup that aggressive non-native plants just love.
And if the current climate there is already favoring these invaders, what does climate change mean for this picture?
It's a huge potential multiplier, unfortunately. The prediction is that higher temperatures, more CO2, extra nutrients, that's all likely to really benefit those floating plants we talked about, like water hyacinth and water lettuce. They thrive in those conditions. But, we can't just focus on the floaters. Even submerged plants like Alodia canadensis are showing real resilience. The data suggests it's doing well across different climate zones, Mediterranean, Nemoral, others. That adaptability is a real warning sign.
Before we get to the study's limits, there was an interesting point about how unique the species are in different places. Apart from those few global superspreaders, is the problem mostly local?
Largely, yes. The study found what's called high species dissimilarity between continents and between these different climate zones. The Jacquard index values were consistently high, mostly between 0.73 and 1.00.
Okay, Jacquard index. For those of us not up on our ecological stats, what does a high score there actually mean?
It basically means that, yes, water hyacinth might be everywhere, but if you compare, say, a lake in California to a river in Italy, most of the other naturalized aquatic plants you find will be different species. So most naturalized species tend to be specific to a particular region or continent. It really highlights that we can't just focus control efforts on those big 6 global players. Management has to be localized to deal with the specific problems in each area.
Which leads us neatly into the limitations. The paper is upfront that the SynHab data, while the best available, isn't perfect. How might the gaps in the data be hiding the true scale here?
Yeah, this is a really important caveat. The data is definitely incomplete, and critically, it's most incomplete in the tropics. The very region we just identified as potentially having the highest invasion intensity. So if the place most vulnerable is also the place we know least about, well, the real global problem is almost certainly much, much bigger than even that $32.8 billion cost estimate suggests. And another thing, the study couldn't really drill down into specific types of aquatic habitats, like comparing lakes versus rivers versus ponds, finally. Different species prefer different conditions, so lumping them might smooth out some important local patterns. We definitely need more detailed data gathering.
So what does this all mean? I think the message from Kortz and the team is pretty clear. We've maybe focused a lot on well-studied invasions in temperate zones, but this data really shouts that tropical and subtropical waters are already highly vulnerable. They need much more focused research and conservation attention, like now.
Absolutely. And if you step back and think about it,
Yeah.
take Pontidaria crassipes, water hyacinth. It's native to tropical South America, right? Yet here it is thriving invasively across all sorts of climate zones, globally, continental, Mediterranean, even arid areas. It makes you wonder, maybe we need to rethink how we use native range to predict invasiveness, especially in a world changing so fast. Perhaps its native range was just the limit before humans started helping it reach its true global potential.
That's a really powerful thought to end on, rethinking what native even means on a planet we're reshaping so profoundly. Thank you for walking us through this critical research. Join us next time for another deep dive.